So, welcome to CAE. For those joining us for the first time, CAE is the global leader in training and simulation, empowering Defence Forces and civil airlines for mission success. We operate over 240 sites globally, and right here at Homebush, this is our regional Indo-Pacific headquarters. We're proud to support the ADF for over 31 years. So here at Homebush, we offer the span of instruction capabilities, engineering, maintenance and project management, and of course some of our world-class training technologies, some of which you'll see today in the Innovation Centre over there. All right, so now for a little bit of history about the building that we're standing in. This building was once the Ford Motor Factory, so it rolled out its first Ford V8 in 1936 and wrapped up with the Ford Laser in production in 1994, not 1944. So during World War II, its focus shifted to producing Bren gun carriers and jeeps for use across the Middle East and Pacific. And remarkably, the entire factory was run by women. So that brings us to the heart of today's event. So when I first entered the world of aerospace and defence, professional spaces, conferences, events, there was a sea of men in navy suits and R.M. Williams boots, and progress has been made to improve that, but not so much to bring those numbers closest to Ford factory in World War II. So today we're met with a challenge. We've got workforce and skilling demands for the ADF and for supporting industry, and how do we fill those gaps, particularly with skilled women? So when Kylie here first reached out with the idea of the breakfast, I knew that I wanted to do something a little bit different. She had just completed a powerful piece of research on women in STEM, which we'll see on the tables in front of you today. And I knew that I didn't want today just to be another networking session. So it had to be a space for real dialogue and connection and brainstorming, and really to think about what each of us can do in our positions here and what we can bring back to our organisations. So if we can all today work really hard to walk away with some actions to bring to each of our organisations, to implement, to discuss, to consider with some of our partners as well, that would be a wonderful thing. So a lot of what we'll speak about today will be theoretical, but you know, if we are looking at government grants, some of which may or may not happen, let's also consider what we can do with the current resources that we have to fill those gaps. So today we are joined by leaders from defence and industry and media and academia, all bringing their own perspectives and a shared challenge. So how do we grow, support and retain a diverse and skilled female workforce? So in a moment, I'll call up our panellists to kick things off. But once we conduct the panel session, I will then throw to you all in your assigned groups to come up with a solution during our workshop session. So you'll be given the prompt on the screens at the end of the panel, and then I'll ask each of you to nominate a spokesperson for your group to brief us on your discussion, your solution, and we can debrief on our progress before we have some delicious brunch outside. So now I'd like to warmly welcome to the couch Professor Anna Paradowska from the University of Sydney, Commander Siobhan Sturdy from the Royal Australian Navy, and Kylie Leonard from Australian Defence Magazine. Welcome, ladies. So, Anna, can I get a quick introduction as to who you are and your role at the University of Sydney?
Hello, everyone. Are you hearing me? Yes. My name is Anna Paradowska. I'm a professor in Advanced Structural Material at University of Sydney. I have a joint appointment with ANSTO, Australian Nuclear Science and Technology. And at the University of Sydney, I'm looking after civil engineering and AME, which is aerospace, mechanical engineering and mechatronics. I have a PhD in welding, repairs and fitness for purpose assessment from Monash University. Before that, I graduated from Polish Technical University in Wrocław. After I finished my career here, I went to Oxford. I worked for 5 years in the large-scale facility, mostly optimizing performance for manufacturing, working on this interface between the academia, industry, and large-scale facility. And 5 years ago, when I took this appointment at the University of Sydney, I wanted to go to a university to create the next generation of engineers who know how to use large-scale facility and who knows how to use work on these bridges between advanced technology and new academic advances and the application in the industry. So my work is mainly with small and medium enterprises, optimization of process performance.
Fantastic. Siobhan?
Good morning, everyone. Commander Siobhan Sturdy. I'm a Marine Engineering Officer in Collins-class submarines. Finished my head of the Marine Technical Department 5 and a bit years ago, a bit over now, and missed my Collins boats terribly. However, over the last 3.5 years or so, I've been working in SSN nuclear-trained workforce development. So, big, hairy, audacious goal to bring a new capability in. A lot of similarities in the technical trades of our humans, but obviously the nuclear part is all extremely new, and we're acquiring it very rapidly. So working on those spaces, working on how we build those skill sets up, how we recognise them, what that's going to look like in terms of civilian qualifications across Australia, because as we know, this is going to be a nationwide enterprise. So yes, I've always been one of very few women in the field. I think when I had come in, we'd had one female marine engineer in Collins-class submarines. We had a weapons engineer just prior to that, or probably at the same time, and then I was the only one for a number of years. We've since had some marvellous female engineers coming through the door. In fact, one of our first 3 across working with the UK, Isabella, she duxed her courses there, won a bunch of awards. She's absolutely smashing it. So things are very slowly changing, but it continues to be slow. So I'm very, very excited to be part of this conversation today and get some other insights in how we can keep the momentum and stop doing the things that aren't working, start doing the things where we're getting that first indication that things are working, and direct our efforts there.
So I'm Kylie Leonard. I'm the Associate Publisher at Australian Defence Magazine. First of all, big thank you for CAE for helping me bring all of this together. I have a background in IT. I was in the first intake when the University of Queensland decided they needed an IT degree. I was one of 6 women into my course, which was 22% of the intake. This current intake, 22% of the intake are women. So they've got more people coming into the degree, but the percentage of them that are female has not changed in, I don't want to count back how many years ago that was. I am the mother of 2 daughters. I have one daughter who's in her honours year at the University of Queensland working in some sort of biology, it's a bit foreign to me, molecular biology, genetics and enzymes or something. She will finish this year with honours, and she's already been offered a PhD place at the university, subject to funding. Always subject to funding. My other daughter is studying to be a marine engineer. She is at the University of Tasmania. She is halfway through her second year there, absolutely loving it. She's one of now 6 women in her year. They are the only 6 women in the degree. There is nobody in first year, third year or fourth year that is female. It's not only that they have a problem attracting women to the degree, they actually have a problem attracting people. So the University of Tasmania has a quota of 120 into their maritime engineering degree. They have 40 this year. They managed to fill a third of their places. Now, I'm trying to do some work with them to raise their profile because we only found out about the degree through my job. So a little bit more about me. I started in IT. I had a fabulous career in IT, working for universities, working for state government in Queensland, working for myself as a consultant. And then I got to about 32 and decided I'd really like to have a family. So my husband is an electrical computer engineer. Yes, he is one of those complete absolute nerds. And we made a decision that if somebody needed to stay home, it's probably me because I had the better skill set than he had, not realising what that was going to mean for me. Our younger daughter, the one who's been in maritime engineering, is autistic. So it was very obvious very early on that she was not going to be able to go to daycare because she doesn't deal well with people. One of the things she can't do is read tones of voice. So you can't say to Sarah, you can't raise your voice and have her sense that you're angry. So she was getting no feedback from her teachers because she had no idea if she'd done something wrong or if they were praising her. So I ended up having a 10-year career gap before she was ready and settled enough at school for me to go back to work. And do you think I could get a job in IT? Absolutely not. So I was very, very lucky that there was a little company that had a head office in Sydney, branch office in Brisbane, and they were looking for somebody with database experience. So they took me on. So I am now I've worked my way up through the organisation to where I am now, and I'm doing this. I'm trying to support more women in our industry. I've been doing this on the 4th of August will be 10 years. So I've gone from being the admin girl with an IT degree and highly qualified as the admin girl up to what I'm doing now. I've got to say, Yaffa is a pretty good organisation to work for. Our boss is female, and she is really, really supportive of everything we're doing. And yeah, so there's one of the statistics you'll see in that piece of research that I've done is that by the time women in STEM fields reach 34, 50% of us leave and never come back. 50%. So when we're talking about a really small intake and across the country, across all STEM fields, it ranges between 22 and 24%. It's much higher in the biological sciences, but if we're talking hard sciences, engineering, the sort of skills that we need in defence, we're looking at about 22 to 26%. And in engineering, it's actually dropped this year. There are fewer women went into engineering as first years this year than the year before. And of that percentage, by the time we get through to a middle or senior or upper management level, we're talking about only 11% of those positions are currently occupied by women in Australia. And if we've got a dropout rate of 50%, it means the pool of women that can move on is quite small. So and those 11% are amazing women. But it's really not good enough. So if we're going to have diversity, and you know the statistics are out there, the more diverse an organisation is, the more successful it is on every single metric. And if all you really care about is the money, businesses that have equal representation at executive level between men and women and other genders across the world are 36% more profitable. So if you only look at it at the base dollar amount, we need more women. We need more women in STEM, we need more women in executive levels. And to get them there, we've got to make this funnel bigger because the dropout rate is so high. We've got to make workplaces more encouraging and more involved and make it easier for women to come back after a career gap. Make it easier for them to come back to part-time work. Make it easier for them to be supportive, like their autistic child has just had a huge meltdown at school and the school's not dealing with them kicking the door in. Happened. You've got to be understanding that you've got to drop and run. You can't suddenly say, I can't come, I'm in this really important meeting, just lock her in a room. That's not feasible, and that's why the women are leaving.
So, Kylie, you referenced some of the experiences and some of the stats that you're seeing through tertiary studies. Anna, if I can throw to you to talk a little bit about maybe your experience and what pursued you into the career of STEM, particularly into the academic field, and maybe talk about a little bit about what you're seeing with people being motivated to stay within those fields or not as well. So we'll start off with what inspired you to pursue a career in STEM?
Actually, I have two brothers and and only uncles. So I spent, and my dad have a mechanical workshop running the buses. So I spent a lot of work around it, you know, and I can do whatever my brothers can do, but the thing is, I went to the technical university because, you know, the only smart female, I'm Polish, I grew up, that was a teacher or a lady in the bank. So I thought that's the only career I could get. And my dad actually was saying, oh, no, you're going to be good in engineering, and you should try the engineering. And I wanted to actually, first I wanted to be a basketball player. Then I wanted to be in finance, making lots of money. But then I was thinking, okay, I try what the dad wants. And I realized, and you know, I have this experience that at the time when I was starting, military was compulsory in Poland. So there was 150 people starting, 120 of them were men, but after the first semester there was only 20 of them, and there were still the 20 women. So I studied through my degree in a 50-50 environment, which is rare, and especially now I'm a professor. I can see that, you know, women, young students struggling because they are in a percentage of 10 to 25, and sometimes it's very difficult for them to find a space. I have last semester a girl who was the first professor. She actually have a degree in her fourth year was a female, which I couldn't believe it. You know, that's the thing. But what I wanted to say that I always, you know, I grew up with MacGyver, you know, so I was thinking that I wanted to be like him. Like, you have to be engineer so you can fix anything, And I realized that more I went into progression in my career, and I sort of did my master degree in mechatronics and material science, and accidentally I think I went up in welding. But I realized because they were funding. But I realized my professor that I approached actually for lab position at university, he said to me, like, you should do a PhD. Why are you not doing PhD? And I said, yeah, one day I go back to Poland and I will do it. Yeah, no, try here. And I started my PhD, and I just realized that I bring a different skill set. Obviously, in welding, I work mostly with males. But I realized that I can speak the language of aerospace engineer and material scientist, and I can communicate my science. Yeah, so I never really felt that I cannot do anything in sort of engineering environment. But I realized that. I have a character that were allowing me to push. If something is impossible, I'm really interested. But not everybody have that attitude. And I think now, as I'm teaching, I'm trying to find the shy ladies, these girls that are extremely bright and smart, but they don't have that sort of power to push themselves in front of a camera or in front of the class. Yeah, because not everybody have to be. So outspoken and creative to be out there. We need every talent, and we come in all the shapes and sizes, and we should appreciate. And every time, sometimes when we were pushing to have in University Sydney employment specifically for women, I remember our previous dean was saying, like, "Oh, Anya, we don't. It's better for them not to have that. We better to have them competing against each other. Anyway, we just want women like you." I said, "No, I have to grow lots of hair on this chest to be here." You don't want the women like me. You want the ones that are not here yet, are different to me, because they bring quite a lot of value. And I think we have amazing talent in our undergrad and postgrad students. And, always in my top 3 will be at least 1, if not 2 females. Mm-hmm. But we're losing them in the pipeline, yeah? And I think it's important that we show them mentors or coaches that can help them to flower with their career. I also have 2 girls, and I really think for me, particular is important because, and I'm not Australian, so I see my daughters being in high school, going through the education system, and they deciding very early when to give up maths. I am surprised because in Poland we have to go to the end with the maths. Yeah, maths is not just a subject; it's solving problems. Yeah, it's finding how to come out from difficult situations. And then I do lots of outreach at schools, at high schools, and I say like, "Oh, but we're not good at maths. Only boys are good at maths." I said, "No, you don't have to be good. You just have to have that grit to solve it." We need people who are amazing good at maths and people who are good at maths. Like, if you wanted to learn, I can guarantee we can teach you. Just give yourself a chance to be able to the program. But I find it that girls are giving up at high school very early. And year 10, if they don't choose advanced maths, they will not even consider STEAM education. And I think we're missing out. Because we sort of targeting the engagement with the students at the year 12, and they already decided. Yeah, yep. And I think I also wanted to point one more thing. I really think we're missing out in this country career grants opportunity or schemes of education for women who are returning to work. Yeah, there's lots of opportunity for our students for STEAM education. If you wanted to study now STEAM, every university have a special program. Come and you can study with this scholarship or something. But there is nothing for women 34 or 40.
It's the barrier for that is if you're already degree qualified, your HECS fees are much higher for a second degree. So if you go back and do additional study after already being qualified with a career gap, the fees are prohibitive.
But during the time of when you are actually raising the kids, you become super efficient. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Like you have the organization skills that your colleagues don't have. I really think like women don't are being sort of like brain depraved during the time that they stay at home. They develop a different skill set, and it's just so demotivating for them if they're ready to go back and there is no opportunity. I really think, okay, I'm in engineering, in automation, things are changing. But even if I have 2-3 years of the stop because of my parents or my children, I really think the science didn't change. the principle of how we solve problems, they don't change. They come a little bit faster, but we have to find a way how the women can come back to work after the career gap.
So Anna, you mentioned that you noticed sort of the problem starting around that primary to high school stage. Now, Siobhan and Kylie both either know someone that's going through Navy training or you've gone through Navy training yourself. From your perspectives, where did you see that start to occur? Where was that sort of lack of motivation or that discouragement or maybe that pressure or not enough resourcing or mentorship in those early stages of education?
So I've had quite limited involvement with the early education piece, but I was involved when Defence first worked with Questacon to stand up the Engineering's Elementary, and it was a thing that very early on seemed the very sensible thing to me, because if all of the studies were showing that girls were self-selecting out of STEM between the ages of 9 and 15, then university grants and schemes, it's too late. They've already self-selected out, they've gone through the process of self-selecting out, and then they've been out for a couple of years reinforcing that choice. So it was too late there. So trying to highlight what the opportunities were and generate the interest and the spark in young minds to hopefully plant a seed before whatever the messaging is or whatever the cultural norms, whatever it is that's getting into the minds of young girls and young women to go, oh, maybe I don't belong here, maybe this is not for me. If you've planted a seed of excitement and passion before that hits, maybe that message will stick less. And then I think once into defence, typically I've seen the women who have made that decision to be there, particularly in the technical streams, will fight very, very, very hard to stay there. And I've got colleagues who I started with, joined up with, they stopped to have children, and then trying to come back in and start again is a challenging thing. And I think there is an overlay there as well when you've got a hierarchical organisation that values rank and seniority, and you're coming back in after a time away. And it's not just people stopping to have children, they go out into other careers, they have to stop to look after family, they've got personal illness, whatever happens. Coming back in and feeling like you need to start again rather than being assessed for what your skill set is, where you are, and a tailored pathway to bring you back in and bring your skill sets to the organisation as quickly as possible, that seems to be lacking all over the world, all over industry. And on face value, you can understand it, but actually it seems really silly because someone who has been out for a while but was trained and highly qualified and is very passionate to get back to it, the resources and time to put that person in to get them up to speed is marginal compared to training someone up from scratch. So I think that, I don't know if there have been efforts to try and build those pathways and there's something that stops them, or we just have never looked at those pathways. I don't know. But I feel like just as much as the maintaining young girls and young women's interest in the STEM subjects and the sense of belonging that they have in those subjects, and then finding ways if and when they do stop for a period of time, ensuring that they can return to their passion, streamlining that pathway, I think there must be the two focus areas.
Okay. So really that middle education stage, early education is really, really important.
Absolutely.
I can see Kylie's nodding her head, shaking her head. She's had...
You'll find in that document there is a study that's come out of France where they looked at 2 million school children over a long period of time across the whole country. They assessed boys and girls before they started school for their mathematical ability, and they found no evidence that there was any difference between the genders at that point before they started school. So they went, great, it's not genetic mathematical ability. Within 4 months of them being at school, they could see a gap between the boys and the girls. By the time they got to 3/4 of the way through the year, there was a big gap. And by the time they finished first year of school, so we're talking 5 and 6-year-olds, most of the girls were saying, maths not for me, it's too hard, it's a boys' subject. So we're talking at 5 or 6, And we're talking 2 million students, so that's across multiple schools, but at the same education system. So that sort of balances out, is it a particular teacher? Is it male teachers? Is it female teachers? That's sort of negated by the size of the study. So there's obviously something inherent in the French education system that is turning girls off maths. They haven't yet identified what it is. This study was only released in Nature at the beginning of this year. That's the first thing. So I agree, we've got to get to these kids, these young people, at a very early age, and it's in prep, it's in reception, it's in that first year of school that we need to be looking at it. We still have teachers in the education system who are telling girls that maths is hard. I mean, in my lifetime, they brought out Talking Barbie, and one of the things she said was, maths is hard, maths is not for girls. And I wish I was making this up, it's true. So we've got that ingrained from the beginning in these young women that maths is not for them. I think it's a really sad case. So there was a girl at my daughter's school. They were at a co-ed private school in Brisbane. She was grade skipped because she was absolutely brilliant. She was put through all these STEM programs. She probably went to most of these STEM programs that are in that book. She was pre-selected to go into a STEM program. She wanted to be a neuroscientist. So she wanted to go and do become a doctor and then go on to her PhD. And she was ready. She was on that path. And then when she looked into it further, she found out that it was going to be really hard for her to have a family. She's a first-generation Australian, and within that career, like, I didn't know this, but in medicine, the professional bodies actually prescribe when the women are allowed to have children. And while it might not be written down, it's there. So like even the Gynecologists and Obstetricians Professional Society, actually have recommendations about when women can take time off to have a family. So she looked at this, and she is a young woman who at 16 wanted a big family. She wants 5 or 6 kids, and she couldn't see how she could get that in her chosen career. So she has walked away from STEM completely. At 16, she made this choice. She's going into merchant banking. So while we still have young women that are having to make such a big life choice, who are gifted and skilled and passionate about STEM at 16, who have been through all these courses, just there's fundamental changes that need to be made. And as to keeping the women in the pipeline, we've just got to be more flexible. We have to realise that women are still in Australia and across the world the primary caregivers for their parents, their partner's parents, and their kids, and in some cases their siblings' kids. You know, it's that sort of blended environment. And until that support is there from industry and for government to support the women to come back, to realise that the skills that they learn at university were not just, like in my case, IT, oh, you can program in C, oh, but C's changed since then, or, you know, you're a network programmer, networks are different. No, hang on, my fundamental skills that I've learned, all that theory and that knowledge and that logical thinking and that ability to get through, that hasn't changed. Like, the fundamentals are still there. Until that is recognised, and until we have the programs, and until there's a fundamental change in the executive management level, to recognise that these women didn't lose their brains because they had babies, or they didn't lose their brains because they had to take a year off because their elderly parents needed extra support. It's not going to change. I'm sorry, I can talk about this for ages. I'm really, really passionate about making changes, not only just for my daughters, but for other 16-year-olds who feel they have to make that choice between having kids and having a career in STEM.
I think we need to have MacGyver on TV again.
But the trouble,
like a cool one.
The trouble is that, so I have a really interesting statistic, another interesting statistic for you. So Institute of Engineers interviewed, I think it was 2022, every first-year engineer across the country, asked them to do a survey. You know what I'm about to say. One of the interesting things that they found was they asked the young men and the young women, do you know anybody else who's an engineer? And only 22% of the male intake knew another engineer before they went, hey, engineering, so I'm going to jump in, that looks really cool, I want to be MacGyver. 70% of the women knew another engineer. So is it that the boys are bigger risk takers? Or that the girls really need this, can't be what you can't see? That's not answered in the survey, but like it's just sort of interesting that women tend to go into fields where they know somebody or they have some lived experience. Do we need to make our girls bigger risk takers? Do we need to make more people like my autistic daughter who doesn't know what a risk is and just went, oh, Tasmania, that looks cool, and it's just really finding winter's really hard. But she jumped into it not knowing because she thinks that degree would suit her because she loves boats. Do we need more young women like that? What do we do to make them more like that?
controversial suggestion as someone who doesn't have children. Is it starting as early as boys are roughhousing, they're climbing up walls, they're climbing trees, and they're allowed to and they're celebrated for it, and women, little girls, are protected from that and prevented? So is their risk appetite being shaped when they're 1, 2, 3 years old?
Quite possibly, yeah. While we're still getting girls going, here's Barbie, and she may be scientist Barbie, but look, she's still wearing high heels with her lab coat. While we still have that as like the social norm, yeah, quite possibly. I mean, yeah, my girls grew up in an engineering scientific background, and like I actually said to them, why did you never think that STEM was for you? And they went, because we never thought it wasn't. And then I got told, yeah, but we're a weird family.
Yes,
yeah.
I benefited directly from my dad being an engineer. So
Yeah.
I was out passing him tools, helping him with the car. Whenever I was starting to learn science and STEM subjects at school, he knew enough about all sorts of things that he would teach me. He would talk me through, this is a cathode ray tube, this is how it works. And consequently, when I was studying those subjects at school, I was already familiar with a lot of things. So then in the class, I was doing slightly extended things. So I was always a bit of a step ahead just because of that early learning environment.
So much to my horror, when my youngest one was 6, my husband bought her first soldering iron. So yeah, like yeah, exactly. So like they've always been in a situation where they can see what's possible and not discouraged because they were girls. Like, do we need to do better jobs as parents in the education system of reaching out to the other families who don't have that STEM background and doing our bit that way? I don't know.
I just wanted to say that, you know, the point of it is, from my perspective, is that we understand that boys are rough and they play around, and you know, but when the girls are supposed to wear pink and then look pretty and don't fail, you know, like you can't fail, don't make it dirty. You know, my dolls didn't have hands. My mom didn't bother my mom. You know, like I was working on how to glue them together. And I was trying to do, I break my children toys, not purposely, but for the reason that you fail, how you repair it. You know, like there are things that, you know, the best, like, you know, with kids, that they sometimes have lots of fun, more not with the toys, but with the box that the toys was in. You know, but we just say, why don't you playing with your beautiful doll? Yeah, and. But I think boys' toys are much more exciting than the girls' toys. We have alley of pink toys and pink clothes still in 2022, and the blue one for the boys. Yeah, and it's just, like, I don't understand why this is it. Like, I think that should start it there for me. But I think we need to teach kids very early to be resistant and fail. And because we name it maths and we name it science, they just think that means that it have to be complicated. But it's really problem solving. You know, like I really think, and I usually in high school nowadays when I'm visiting I organize events in primary schools where we build things from cartons. You know, like rockets or a desalination plant or whatever. You know? But you can paint it, girls. You can paint it. I don't have a problem with it. It's as long as you creatively involve with the project that requires some way of thinking. That if you wanted this color, you can explain it to me why. But I think in high school is different. Is that the girls are already sort of thinking that what they wanted to be. And I always say to them, like, you want a career with no borders? Man, engineering is the thing to do. Like I graduated from Poland, work in Australia, work in the US, work in UK. I can work anywhere with this degree. Amazing. It will always be on demand, and industry is looking for it. And the other thing is, okay, I'm a mechanical, mostly engineer. I love to get my hands dirty. Not everybody like it, but modern STEM is gonna be AI-driven, machine learning. You will be doing what the business degree will give you, but mostly in application. And I really think it's about finding that passion. Like, you want to help people. Most of us really wanted to I mean, I love my children. I would love to stay with children, but I love my work too because I feel I make an impact. short-term and long-term. The short-term giving them examples that mom loves what she's doing, and the long-term that I am creating the next generation of engineers that will find the passions and make better bridges, better trains, better submarines. You know? And I think in the work environment, I also think that from even looking at my colleagues, gentlemen jumps jobs very quickly, more often, yeah? Women are more loyal. If you allow to invest in a woman, even if it is maybe slightly underqualified, you're going to have more of her because she's not going to be moving the jobs as much because she have other obligations, yeah? In terms of the flexibility for a woman, it's like in my environment when I work for industry and government, you change how you advertise a job. There are now EI programs that can help you to attract more women. You know, we have a lab assistant position. We advertise it from, from 8 to 5. No women apply. We change it that it can be flexible from 9 to 2. We have 50% application female. So it's really important to see that potentially, why one position, a lab assistant, cannot be run by 2 women part-time. Yeah. Actually, that was the best investment we ever did. We have the 2 amazing organized female working well together to deliver the job well above. I think sometimes it requires a little bit changing perspective rather than replace men with a woman, thinking how we can replace the position with different strategy to deliver the same work or more.
Yeah. Now, holistically, have you all seen a shift in attitudes and culture, and what's been the catalyst in that shift? Has it been ladies like yourselves that have been fortunate enough to have a great upbringing where you've been exposed to a lot of STEM, a lot of engineering, a lot of support from that familial sense? Has it been change makers that have come through and identified that there is an issue? What has been that catalyst for the shift? And has there been a shift across your career? Have you seen a change in how we're approaching gender diversity, women in STEM? Siobhan, I'll start with you. Big question.
Yeah, I think there has definitely been a shift. Like I said before, I benefited from an upbringing that just made me very, very comfortable in that space. I think also, and it's a slightly uncomfortable memory, I was very, very much a tomboy when I went into Navy and when I went into submarines. And I think that smoothed my pathway because I wasn't such a massive cultural challenge to the almost entirely male departments. And in some cases, I was probably a bit of a novelty because I had been labelled like a cool dude with long hair. So there was a little bit of a novelty that, oh, hey, we've got the chick engineer, but she's just like one of the boys. And that was just me. I wasn't putting anything on to be part of that, but I think I probably had a bit of internalised misogyny and I had some learning journeys to go on. But I have seen, more women coming through. I'm constantly, at least when I was down at the waterfront, because I'm not working with young junior people as much now in the position I'm in currently, constantly pleasantly surprised by the young people coming through. I remember we had a visit from the United States Navy many, many, many years ago when they were starting to introduce women into their submarines. And we had a big town hall and we had a senior officer asking for the women in the team, you know, have you felt like they quoted that 30% number that you need a cohort of at least 30% before they start feeling like and being treated like a minority, and we hadn't reached 30%. Have you felt like you couldn't effect change? And I gave some very clever remark about feeling like I was more of a minority because I had red hair than for being a woman. But that had been my experience. And one of the conversations that came out of that forum was when they had asked the junior sailors, the young men, what's it like working with women? The young blokes just didn't even understand the question. They were like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't we be working with women? And that was a really pleasant surprise. And I'm assuming that's still happening. I know there's some troubling things happening in the manosphere and the Andrew Tates and some cultural shifts there. But in the younger generations, I have definitely seen changes. Where I think it starts to meet resistance is when they go into industries, companies, where the senior decision makers are previous generations. And are resistant to those new attitudes and those changes, or just don't even see them, and they mould people away from their very gregarious, egalitarian approach into something more structured again. So I think that might be slowing down the process a bit. But overall, there's change. It's just grindingly slow. Yeah.
Anna or Kylie, from your perspective, have you seen a shift over time?
There has been no increase in the percentage of women taking on STEM degrees or post-school STEM qualifications in 30 years. So the government likes to spruik that there's an extra 5,000 women have taken on engineering, but as a percentage it hasn't changed. So yeah, there's an extra 5,000 women, but the percentage of young men going into engineering has also gone up. So we're still not getting that cohort in there, and that's 30 years worth of nothing happening. And you know, you can see the statistics in there. The government over the last period, 5 to 10 years, and there's another 5 years to run on some of these programs, has ploughed $200 million into STEM programs for girls. And the big telling, apart from the fact there's been no change, is that there's no metric. None of these programs have been asked to prove that they're actually effective. So there is one program, I think it's Curious Minds, and they do a post-course analysis with the girls, but the questions are like, did you have fun? And what 14-year-old girl who's away from home living on a university campus for a week without mum and dad supervising is not going to say it's fun? But then there's no follow-up. So my oldest one, Rebecca, went through Curious Minds. She was accelerated, so she was the youngest one in the course. She went through it, she had an absolute ball. Now, she kept in contact with a lot of the girls in her cohort because they sort of adopted her as their little sister. None of them, apart from Rebecca, continued on to STEM. And Curious Minds is one of the biggest, most funded, and it is an amazing course, but they're not getting it right. So have I seen change? I think Navy is doing amazing stuff. I think Navy Women and all the support that Navy is giving women is truly amazing. I'd like to see that same sort of support coming through Air Force and Army in particular. I know Natasha Fox is trying really, really hard, but excuse my language, I think she's pushing shit uphill because, as you said, of some resentment from that older generation. I'm sorry to the older, my age gentlemen and stuff that are in the room, but there's a lot of them that are not prepared to shift because that's what they came up with and that's what's worked for them. So, and they're successful and their companies are successful, so why change? I think we have a really, really long way to go. And Andrew Tate's not helping. Because we're getting, last point, we're getting a divide. So we've got the young men who are in their, the millennials, the people that voted out Peter Dutton because they thought he was a misogynist up in Queensland, that group. But then we've got this splinter group, and the statistics I've seen, sorry, my background is in maths and IT, I like statistics, is that 25% of young men in that millennial Gen Z age group, so the under 30s, there's about 25% that think Andrew Tate is a role model. So we're getting this real split in that that generation of younger men from the ones who think that being a misogynistic pig is acceptable and those that are champions of change. And we've got to hang on to those champions of change and reach out to these radicalised, because they are these radicalised young men, and shift their attitude as well. So that way there doesn't need to be a difference between men and women. You're just an engineer, you're just a scientist, and your gender no longer matters.
I know that UCIT is doing some amazing work with STEM programs and to really engage women throughout those stages where you've got social media and pop culture and everyone influencing you, right? So if I can bring us to the last question for the panel. So for investments made by corporates, state, federal government, how should funding be prioritised to retain female talent, considering all of this? And what has worked well in your organisation? Anna, if you'd like to tell us.
I think we have lots of programs, especially for young girls coming from high school to go to the STEM programs, and we have lots of support. And now we don't want unicorns anymore. I think that's fantastic. We want tribes of females going through the degree, and then they will go to the industry, and they will develop their network, because we all know that it's very important that you progress in your career depending on who you know. at some stage. To certain stage, to get a job, you have to know something. But how you progress is the network. And I think if they have a network within their organization and outside, they will grow and they will support each other. I think that is very important. And to really not to have a one scholarship for a female, but actually 10, rather than to make more of them at the same time. I really think it's important to have not just women in the room, and I am impressed to see our colleagues here, because this is not a women problem. This is a population, society problem. And us discussing this is not going to get us anywhere. And I think that is the biggest change. I saw it in the university. Because diplomatically, everybody's saying like, yes, we want more women, but that's a women event, It's not a women event. It's about discussing how we can change. And I think the biggest change I see in my colleagues is the ones who have daughters. Because they don't see the problems until their daughters choosing the degree. And until they come home and crying that, somebody said that if you didn't find a husband yet, you're wasting your time here. So, it's really important that we really encouraging us talking more broadly to the community. I very agree with you, Siobhan, that the next generation, they don't see the problem. Because we didn't know that there is a sexism. When I grew up, I didn't thought that women don't do engineering. Or I remember my first job in Australia was in a company that did architectural glazing. I was the first woman. But I was there. I didn't know that women not supposed to be there. Then another job in Melbourne, I was the first foreigner and the first woman. And then I finished my degree in Australia, went to UK, and worked in the scientific institution. They never engineering beamline. They never have an engineer before. Not that they have a woman. So it's a really not that I didn't look for a job that women need to fit in. I find the job that I wanted to do. But maybe I'm not representing the full spectrum. We actually have to think why women don't see this as an opportunity. Because I think career in STEM is very flexible. Nowadays, you can do remote working. You can have family. I think you can have it all. It's just not at the same time. You have to learn, be a little bit more patient. But you can have a job that is, we have to show young women and women who are planning to return to work that this is possible. And I think in social media, we have such a push on young people, and we should continue that, but we also have to showcase female returning to work or changing the career path. I think especially I think maybe my parents' generation, you have the degree and you do this for the rest of their life. I was a materials engineer, was working as a scientist, professor in civil, and now in aerospace. My career probably will change 5 more times. We have to help the young females saying that if you choose mechanical engineering, that doesn't mean that you will be tightening the bolts. It can be anything, what you passionate and wanted to do in life. And you don't have to decide it at 16. Actually, please do not until 26. I think it's so important that, I think that especially now as I have a teenager at home, I realize that my kids they're thinking they will be retiring at 26. They wanted to be, all my students want to be entrepreneurs, and at 35 they're traveling the world. And I'm saying, no, travel when you're 21. Learn as much as you can for the best people in the world, and then you figure out what you wanted to do. But I think we just have to be, I also think that from education perspective, it's about educating the parents. Because the parents they don't see where, what kind, in my social environment where my kids play soccer, I'm the only engineer, And I always say, when I remember when I was younger, they would say, oh, and you're not stay-at-home mom. And I said, no, because I love my children. you know, the point of it is like I am a much more better mom when I come back from home and I can really put the love for a couple of hours and then let somebody else educating them. But the point I'm trying to make is like I tell them now, maybe we didn't have much in common when we were little, but now when our children are deciding which classes to take, maths, advanced or something, I can tell them like, you don't have to choose STEM, but don't give up on maths. Maths is so important, you know, like really it can open lots of opportunity. Now I know you're so bright and you want to do medicine or a law, but actually if something goes banana, you know, you may considering to do engineering and or double degree, you know. So giving yourself opportunity that math is not something that we don't do because it's hard, but math is about a skill set, you know, to solving problems. Like,
all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to throw the question to you as part of your workshop. So, if you were given $40 million to spend on a STEM program, where and how would you spend it? So if you were given $40 million to spend on a STEM program, where and how would you spend it? I'd like to extend a huge thanks to Anna, Siobhan and Kylie for sharing your insights today. They'll also be joining you in your workshops and I'll be floating around to help guide you all. We'll have the workshop run for about 30 minutes and then we'll debrief afterwards. But yeah, if we could focus on where those funds need to be spent to have the biggest impact, generate results that should be quantifiable. It shouldn't be a repeat of what has been tried and maybe hasn't worked. And I encourage you all to be imaginative and think outside the box. So $40 million to spend on a STEM program, where and how would you spend it? Go. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to interrupt the awesome discussions that are going on, but I would like to throw to some of our groups. All right, now it's come to the point of our event where we can reflect and discuss as a group what we have maybe learnt today or maybe come up with as a solution. So I'll go around to each of your tables to identify a spokesperson or just pop your hand up. And we'd love to hear about either some of the findings that you had, if you managed to spend the $40 million in the very short amount of time that we had, or find other avenues to generate impact. So I'll start off here with table 1. Siobhan, tell us about what you discovered.
Alrighty, we discovered, that we don't know how much things actually cost and how far $40 million would stretch. We also, I think, came to the conclusion that there probably needs to be a lot more than $40 million. However, it needs to be a progressive thing. I think we need to, wherever we're going to spend money, we need to put the first instances of it into somewhere where we will get runs on the board, demonstrate success to whoever has been resisting or whoever's just been disinterested, and try and build from there. So we've got a whole lot of notes. I'm sure this wouldn't fit into $40 million, but I think one of the things that we found in Kylie's research was, there's been a lot of money spent, not necessarily a lot of progress, primarily because it just hasn't been being measured. So we don't know what's been working, we don't know what hasn't been working. The STEM Equity Monitor looks like it's really starting to build a picture, even though I think there's probably a lot of interrelated things and variables that aren't really captured there yet. But I think we need to beef that up to make sure that we're getting data that we can use to make data-driven decisions. I think it's very clear that we need to get the messaging out still. We need to be, and the messaging varies depending on the audience. So little kids, very young kids, need to see not the scary aspects of it, but the cool aspects of it, that STEM is just puzzles. It's just puzzles and riddles, and it's fun and it's interesting and it's fascinating. So tailoring the format of that messaging early, tailoring the format of messaging to teachers to give them the confidence to talk about, you know, this subject can lead you to a role in this, even teaching the subjects, because if they don't come from a STEM background and they've got years of messaging that if you haven't done STEM, you're not STEM, it's hard, it's scary, alleviating those fears in them, messaging to the parents to show them, reassure them about what roles look like, provide them understanding of what opportunities there are for their children if they pursue STEM careers, and messaging to industry. So we keep returning to the biggest theme, I think, here was the what's in it for me, which is why this getting the runs on the board is so important, that we've all read the things about more diverse groups, there's better bottom lines, there's more innovative solutions. We know the benefits are there, but I don't know how much that has been communicated to industry, society, everything, in real terms that they can look at and tailored for their business. If you did X, Y, Z, this is where your business could be in 5 years' time. Or if you did X, Y, Z, this is what your retention numbers would look like in the military in 5, 10 years' time. So really strategic messaging. We came back to that returning to work focus. We had a great example of keep in touch days where people who had been out of the workforce for a while could ramp up their return, do a day a week, do a couple of days a week, get their foot back in the door and mitigate that risk of the big catch-up when they'd been out of it. So that's somewhere we would want to put money in. And this one's really nebulous and would cost a whole lot more than $40 million, and I don't even know how you'd start it. But we've put a lot of money into attracting women to STEM, retaining women in STEM. A lot of that funding and focus, I feel like, and we feel like, has been gone on putting the load on the women to do the work. And we haven't necessarily looked very deeply at what it is we're trying to push against. So examples, if we're trying to make it easier for women to take leave and have a family and return to the workplace, what we're pushing against there is the fact that typically men don't do that. Typically policy hasn't even supported to men to do that even if they wanted to. And typically when the new policy comes in, we've read about those men experiencing discrimination if they do take advantage of those policies. So, and I think back to this Andrew Tate divide that is appearing, where we have had successes in empowering women to go out and be career-driven and go into typically male spaces and assert themselves and be successful, I don't think as a global community we have addressed the personal risk, the risk to identity for the men in those spaces who think they're being pushed out or feel intimidated or uncertain. So, and that's not women's fault, it's not anyone's fault, but it's another example of where we've made great strides changing how women work, changing how women are perceived, changing the opportunities for women, and we haven't provided enough consideration or even really listened necessarily to the second and third order effects, what those look like, what the backlash to those might be. So I think that's probably true in every area, that we try and make change. We might be doing it quite one-dimensionally and not anticipating the adjustments that have to be made around that and being receptive to the angst and the pain and the growth pains that come with that. But I think that's very, very large and probably very, very expensive, and we did not find a solution to it.
That's okay,
So
we've
on
got
that
more
note-
time. Thanks very
We
much.
can split it into. The first is we said we'll probably use about 10 million or so, probably need more, to look at programs that target primary school children, but include the parents as well. So what we were looking at is some sort of holiday program that involves probably technical sports, like sailing, where you need to navigate or learn how to use a map, get the parents involved. Very expensive, might need more than 10 million. But it gets both parties thinking about STEM and different ways in which they can focus and do that. We also looked at probably a platform that has a whole lot of STEM modules in it, and students or children can take part in those modules and earn some points, and maybe points can be redeemed for something. We looked at scholarships as well, because parents like scholarships. So how do we involve more of that, but start in primary school, years 5, 6, and probably 6 and 7, or 7 and 8 in high school as well, at the age where they're starting to make choices, so target them at that age. We then said advertising, maybe spending some of our 10 million on advertising, but looking at new forms of advertising like Instagram, influencers, X, getting onto these platforms and getting people or children, students, or people that have gone through STEM to make it seem cool and to get children to buy in. We also looked at STEM-based TV programs, so some things like Beyond 2000, that was for the generation that used to watch that, MacGyver, introducing these introducing updated programs that target the new technologies like AI and other sorts of STEM. And lastly, we said the last 10 million we have, let's spend it on programs that target the public. So get the public to come up with ideas that could be used for STEM. And we might be surprised. We might end up finding something that's totally unique that none of us in this room have thought about, coming from somebody sitting in the corner of Australia. So that's what we said. Lots of ideas.
Fabulous work.
Hi, my name's Kalisha. I'm from the University of Sydney. We had great conversation at our table, as it sounds like everyone else has been. Great topic to talk about. We did also talk about a program for virtual campaigns and basically changing people's perceptions. I think a really great one that was identified was around the readers and uplift of the readers that students have in school. So that would involve parents and children, about 10 million for that program. There's 9,800 primary schools. Thanks, Bern, for doing some stats and research beforehand and being able to monetise that program. UK has a number of programs and great ideas, so we kind of were thinking of leveraging those things like the school governance boards. They have maths programs and engineering, and it kind of works on similar to Group 2 in terms of the platform idea, but having a lot of volunteers from STEM feed into it. And so that then sort of led to a conversation about how can we kind of, with organisations, make a loop. So how can people be involved and volunteer their time? Social indicators, or maybe it's included in their volunteer time. So just making sure that there's benefits and rewards for those people who are generously giving their time. We did talk about upskilling teachers. So another stat from Bern, thank you. 60% of teachers are outside their discipline for STEM. So, having a program that would work with teachers in terms of doing that upskill. And we also talked about having, there was things about open house, like in companies and students getting access to coding, but also the ability for what sort of internships we have. So at the moment, some of them only have the ability to go to sort of beauty and fashion, which no problem, we're all inclusive. But, also how do we make sure that STEM is in that, those opportunities for students, and they're getting access and not just thinking in that technical way of a scientist as a person in a lab coat. Same with an engineer, broadening people's perceptions around what that means. And the other great thing is around Cert 4s. I didn't realise this, but they are free and they're across a whole bunch of STEM. So that could be a way of upskilling people in organisations, making them feel more comfortable about STEM if they're non-technical. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca. I'm an electrical engineer in the Navy. The main focus that we were talking about in our group was the importance of education and getting the right people in education for STEM-related subjects. So to invest in the STEM teachers in schools, so the maths and physics and other sciences, to improve the learning experience for students from the get-go. As Group 3 was talking about, a lot of STEM teachers, that's not actually their specialisation. And in schools there are specialist music teachers or specialist art teachers, so why shouldn't there be specialist STEM-related teachers? We were also talking about how for people in the engineering industry or in STEM-related workplaces, to go into teaching, they'd have to take a significant pay cut. So that's possibly where some funding could go towards those specialist STEM teachers. Or programs between education and industry where engineers can go back to schools one day a week or whatever the routine may be to provide that that practical application of what people have done and how they've used that STEM learning in the industry and bring that back to the students from the get-go. We also had a bit of a discussion about how even if these programs do work and do get women into the STEM-related fields, that once they get to the workplace, they become more and more the minority. So even if there is a cohort of women going through STEM-related subjects at school or engineering at university, that cohort is then split even further in the industry and just creates, even a bigger gap, making them more of a minority in the workplace. And unfortunately, as that gap continues, then those people feel alone in the workplace, which then is only going to end up in them leaving, and then we've lost that group of qualified people. So while we don't have a solution to, I suppose, that aspect, thinking about how we can get the right people into education and the right expertise and industry experience into providing that practical application to students from the get-go, and then hopefully we can build up the women in the workplace and they can continue through in a bigger cohort.
So my name is Sarah Cullens. I'm the founder of Precision Public Affairs. We're a GR firm who supports CAE with their government engagement, and our group consisted of some veterans, some current serving personnel and some industry personnel who are engineers and who have been through apprenticeship schemes. So we looked at this slightly differently because we all were very interested in how we came to be in our respective fields, and we took a lot from the panel discussion in the sense that people like Anna were making it very clear, and Siobhan as well, around the messaging getting into the educational environment where our young women are and men about the career opportunities that are available in STEM. And we came up with I've worked in government. I'd spent 10 years on the Hill working for various prime ministers and cabinet ministers, so I look at this from a very clinical perspective, in the sense that I know that $40 million isn't going to go far. And I know how that we need to lobby ministers to work with departments to secure funding to undertake programs, and I know that ultimately no government, regardless of their political persuasion, is going to invest in a pilot system or any kind of STEM program until they've sort of done a pilot system first. So we looked at it through 3 tranches of funding, split a little bit inequitably, but also based on our own experience as parents and as people who are adults who have responsibilities out. Even if you don't have children, you all have family responsibilities of some nature. So you're caring for elderly parents or caring for siblings or so on and so forth. So that played a lot into the way that we split the funding, $40 million. So ours isn't particularly innovative, Anna, and that comes from my very cynical, pragmatic experience working in government. And so we came up with a campaign which had a bit of a catchphrase called Inspire, Include and Invest, building women's futures into STEM and defence. And so 40 million, again, not much, but enough to, you know, start a conversation, we would like to think. So I'm also the mother of 2 daughters, so I am right in this, you know, point in their careers where we're having a discussion around, am I going to continue maths? And I've got a daughter in Year 9 right now who's trying to self-select out, and I've got news for her, it's all bad. Her mother's going to tell her, no, that's not going to happen, sweetheart, despite the fact that I didn't pursue maths. But anyway, so I've also got a 12-year-old daughter who is, you know, sadly, like many in her generation, you know, addicted to devices, despite the fact that we put in many rigorous attempts to limit that exposure. So social media is where it's at, right? And you want to make STEM as sexy and as accessible as possible. So that means you've got to get a spokesperson on board who has the ability to connect with young people, to highlight to them to the fact that STEM isn't a scary concept, and it is about things like puzzles, and it's about thinking in an abstract way, which kids do actually do by nature, and it's innate to them, and I think we beat it out of them as we progress through life. But I think making it clear to young people through a identity or a national identity that resonates with them will obviously pique their interest and inspire them to, you know, pursue learning more about that particular opportunity. So we put $5 million towards a social media influence campaign, which again is not going to get far. And so that's, you know, TikTok, providing it's not bought out. I mean, providing it is bought out by the US, and Instagram and so on, with someone who's really high profile and popular amongst young people. And then $5 million in a national roadshow for that particular influencer to go around to primary schools, because I've got a high school child and we've got, you know, a Year 6 child. So it's Year 6 is actually, I think, where it's at, where you need to start that conversation around STEM and how sexy and exciting it is and what the potential is, regardless of whether you go into it through an apprenticeship or you go in as an NCO into defence or you go in as a commissioned officer. And then, you know, obviously we attract them in, but ultimately you want to retain them. And as we go through life, we mature, we enter a new stage where we become carers of some description, either to children or to parents or family members or friends. And, you know, flexibility and understanding is key. So obviously, it's sad that it took a global pandemic for people to realise you don't need to be in an office to work, but, and, you know, being someone who worked for a government that decided to actually try and take money away out of the childcare system, you know, I think that is where we need to ensure that more money is invested. So we allocated the large sum of our budget, $20 million, to making sure that people, regardless of you know, whether they were male or female, had the opportunity to access childcare or at-home support to enable whoever, that woman or man who is in STEM, to stay where they are. And of course, having the flexible workplace was critical to that. So childcare, carers leave, parental leave, so on and so forth. And then finally, you know, the invest part is ensuring that we keep those people in the career that they've chosen and retrain or reskill or upskill in time, as, you know, if we've had to take time out for parental or carers leave, we then have the ability to bring those skills back up to current standards. So we dedicated $10 million to a senior apprenticeship pilot to partner with industry to give them a bit of an incentive as well, to ensure that people who'd been out of the workforce for a particular period of time were able to upskill and hone those current requirements to pursue their career in STEM. Thanks.
Fantastic. So the first idea we have two. I'm going to speak to a parenting education program. I think being a parent myself to 3 little kids, from the minute you decide to start a family, from the minute you are pregnant, you look at educational resources, and so much of the education is you read to your children. It is so important that every day they're reading books. And I can remember sitting with a newborn on my lap and reading these picture books to them. The minute they start school, it is so English focused around sight words, readers, and as they get older, make sure you read 20 minutes, half an hour every single day. So I'd like education programs for parents to actually include the problem solving, the maths from that young age. And I think we could do it through both parenting, through programs, but also through daycare-aged programs and with the children involved. We spoke here about the kids that are getting into the STEM subjects are those that have had role models. So either a parent in engineering or aunts, uncles, whatever that looks like. My family, we have no engineers, and I think I've done my children a real disservice because it's just not something that was ever on my radar to look at puzzles and problem solving as a way to a future career. It just wasn't. I'm very good on the reading and not so much on the maths. So I think it's really critical that we start to address that from the get-go and bring it in through daycare programs moving forward. And then second idea.
I think our other idea, and I do apologise, I might just jump the gun and say the younger age daycare focused one might get 30 mil from our bucket because the other one, I believe, should be a pilot at the moment, and then it's probably the easiest way knowing industry because I come from a background of finance and general association industry. And I've worked with a lot of engineers. Thank you. So the other program that we had, roughly 10 to 15 million, can be used in a pilot program for transferable skills. We talk a lot about the funnel, the leaky pipeline. We have people already in the workforce. How do we get them back? So if how do we get them back, but also how do we, and this may sound a little bit unsavoury, but how do we poach people from other sectors? So if I were to give you an anecdote, I'm currently in media and communications, but I am a Certificate 4 qualified IT professional. And I purely pursued a Certificate 4 because when I was in finance, I learned how to code just because my mentors pushed me and I was given freedom to do what I want. So I tried to automate and make things easy. Kind of grew an interest for like pure IT there, and I'm still in media communications at the moment because I'm good at that and I love what I do. There are no opportunities for me to apply my IT skills outside in a role. I don't think I'm confident enough to kind of move into a STEM piece, but traditionally I may be considered qualified as a STEM professional with, a small certificate in information technology. So the skill transfer or transferable skills program would ideally look at what skills do we need in STEM. Maybe let's use defence industry as an example. What skills are we lacking? Can we fill that gap with a female-focused transferable skills program? This could go hand in hand with things like people returning to the workforce, because you'd be highlighting, a 3 to 6 month program, let's say, that builds skills and kind of welcomes people into the sector, as opposed to just saying, yep, we've got a lot of jobs available, we want more women in the workforce. It's tailored, saying you don't have to be in this sector, but we've got this program available to you. Come along, see what it's like, and these are the career trajectories that could be built from that. So pilot program, I don't think, in an ideal world, it won't take more than 10 to 15 mil. It'll probably break the budget, but we'll probably go over budget, but that's the other idea that we came up with.
So for myself, I'm in the APS working as a STEM cadet, and from my own experience, there's a lot of people in STEM, but a lot of the kind of difference comes from the support networks that encourage those people to go into the programs. So for me, I kind of always knew this is what I wanted to do. But I have a lot of friends who weren't so sure, but their parents kind of pushed them into it a little bit, or they had teachers at school that were really supportive. And that was kind of the difference that made them actually choose that career path. The most important thing in any career is that people that are passionate are the ones that stay. And so you want people to actually want to be there from an early age and have their own motivation all the way through. So for us, we didn't really get to a conclusion about where to spend the 40 million, but we discussed a few kind of pathways of how to encourage people in STEM. The main one being parents of primary school age children. There's a lot of support in high school at the moment for like kids that want to pursue STEM or even those that don't. But kind of educating parents that things like pursuing maths and following that through to the end is quite good. But if you're making every parent sit through something like interrelate and sex education, why not make them sit through a seminar on potential careers? So I really think one thing that you could encourage is more kind of interaction between industry or even early career and university students and primary school age parents and potentially even their kids. Because if the parents are interested, they're going to also kind of encourage those kids to pursue those pathways. One other idea was potentially having, not mentoring, but like kind of sit-down discussions with those early age kids and some people who are maybe a bit younger, maybe a bit older, or a big mix of people in STEM. This doesn't have to just be for women, but I find that like early in primary school, kids kind of do everything together regardless of what gender they are. And if you get them to sit down and someone comes and tells them about their cool like rocket that they're building or they're working on submarines or boats or anything like that, those kids are going to be excited. And so to kind of encourage them to want to think more about it and potentially watch more YouTube videos about it in their own time, you could even have more of those fireside kind of discussions with kids early on. One other thing we did discuss was later in career trying to enter the workforce again. They were kind of the two main points that we identified, was that really early education. There's a lot of high school programs and early university programs at the moment. But coming back into the workforce, there are a few things out there, but they're not really publicized very much. So one of those is, for instance, if you wanted to transition careers into engineering, but you don't have any STEM background, haven't done maths in 20 years, there are some universities that run diplomas or associate degrees. And I think more publicizing of that and like kind of the fact that you don't have to go straight into a bachelor's or you don't have to have the prerequisite knowledge is really kind of a way to encourage more late career or even secondary career people to kind of come into STEM and start something new. Now, that might even be offering a refresher course and encouraging employers that, hey, someone's just spent a year restudying what they knew, they've refreshed it, they're just as qualified as someone coming out of an engineering degree out of university, you should hire them again. Yeah, pretty much. There's currently a lot of exposure for STEM. I feel like for me, especially being a woman in undergraduate STEM, there's a lot of people talking about it, but you kind of just need that encouragement from support networks. So from parents, from employers, from industry, I think the thing that makes the biggest difference is really that encouragement and making women and men believe that they're capable of being able to do that role. Because anyone can have the skills, but if they don't think that they can do it, they're probably not going to. So, yeah.
Fantastic work. Everyone, what an amazing opportunity to get our heads together, to brainstorm, to discuss what may or may not even need to happen. I think all of us have different experiences getting ourselves to this point in our career. If we reflect back, there's pros and cons, but I think collectively what we want to do is improve that for the future, for our children, for our grandchildren, friends and family. So I'm really, really pleased with the conversations that have happened today. I think the next steps from here, Kira and Kylie from ADM will be able to collate a lot of this information. We will be hopefully sending out a bit of a feedback form as well to capture some of your new ideas, any additional feedback, any light bulb moments that happened tonight in the shower. So please feel free to share them with us. We would love to publish some of these conversation points and really just help industry become informed and equipped with the next steps. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for arriving today. And look, we've got some time now to continue the conversation outside. We've got some brunch. And for those who are a little bit more tech-minded, would love to get their hands on some simulators. We do have our Innovation Centre open. So Blake and Dana, our two engineers, will take you through some of what CAE does. So thank you, everyone, for your support today and for coming along. And we hope that you received a lot of value from it.